Hello, my name is Shelley Simpson. I am the Trust Food Safety Advisor for Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital, NHS Trust. This presentation provides a statutory safety update for ward and department-based non-catering food handlers who provide food and drink for our patients. The aim of this training is to refresh and raise your general awareness about food safety and safe food handling practices, to protect our patients and our customers from any type of harm arising from eating contaminated food, prevent the risk of food poisoning and allergic reactions, and to reduce food complaints and provide a good meal experience for both patients and staff. In this training module, I will provide an update on the following: the Trust Food Safety Policy and associated codes of practices, an update on the latest Environmental Health Officers inspections that have taken place, the Ward Kitchen Food Safety folder and the Ward Kitchen Food Safety checklist that must be completed, the importance of checking use-by dates, particularly on pre-packed sandwiches, to refresh your knowledge on food poisoning and foodborne diseases, symptoms of food poisoning, causes and sources of contamination, to highlight the vulnerable high-risk groups that we need to keep safe, the requirements for bacterial growth and the importance of keeping high-risk foods safe, patient meal service and temperature control at ward level, the importance of providing the correct diets and modified textured meals to prevent aspiration and choking, personal hygiene responsibilities of all food handlers, the procedure to follow for food brought in by friends and relatives, food safety incident reporting on Datex, food allergen management and protected meal times, and the red tray system. Please remember, food matters for our patients. Nutrition and hydration is really important. Food safety is very important to reduce the risk of food poisoning and to ensure full compliance with food safety legislation. By law, you have a legal duty to keep food safe. Food safety controls have been implemented in our trusts to prevent all types of contamination, including listeria and other types of food poisoning organisms, food allergens, chemical and physical contamination. These controls will be reiterated in this training. To ensure correct standards are maintained to the highest standard throughout the food chain, the Trust has a food safety policy with 23 codes of practices. These have been recently updated and can be accessed in the document library on the Trust intranet. Codes of practices must be adhered to at all times in order to keep food safe and to demonstrate compliance with food safety legislation. In particular, you must familiarise yourself with Code of Practice 13, Food Safety in Ward Kitchens and Food Hygiene Practices, Code of Practice 19, Food Allergens and Food Intolerances, and Code of Practice 4, Personal Hygiene. For protected meal times and the red tray system, please also refer to the Trust Protected Mealtime Policy, which has also been updated. The local authority environmental health officers carry out formal inspections of our food premises. These inspections include main kitchens and ward kitchens. Following each inspection, we are awarded with a food safety rating. Our current rating has recently been updated and remains at the highest level 5. During their inspection, they will carry out an assessment and they will check food handling practices in the main kitchens and ward kitchens, maintenance standards for structure and equipment to make sure that they're well maintained, in good repair and clean. They will also seek assurance that we are managing food safety and will check completion of food safety documentation. These inspections are usually unannounced, therefore the Trust can expect a visit from an environmental health officer at any time. A few years ago, whilst carrying out a formal inspection, the environmental health officer discovered pre-packed sandwiches past the use-by date in a ward refrigerator. This is against the law and resulted in our food safety rating being reduced to level 4. It is very important that you understand use by and best before dates and abide by the controls that we have put in place to ensure food safety and quality is maintained for our patients. When food decays and goes off, you can usually tell because you will notice changes in the smell, taste and texture of the product. This is caused by spoilage organisms. If food contains pathogenic, harmful organisms such as Salmonella or Listeria, you will not be able to tell by its appearance, taste or smell. It will look and taste perfectly normal. For this reason, food products that are considered high risk are given a use-by date. This is a safety label which is applied to perishable foods which have a relatively short shelf life. It is an offence for a food business to sell or use food that is beyond its use-by date because such food will have exceeded the critical time limit within which the product might be considered safe. After this date, bacteria may have multiplied to a level sufficient to cause food poisoning. Therefore, the product must be disposed before its expiry. If an enforcement officer finds food past its use-by date in food premises, they will presume it is for sale or use and could start legal proceedings. Best before dates are applied to food with a longer shelf life and are usually stored at ambient temperatures. This date indicates when the product is at its best quality. To demonstrate best practice, the policy of the Trust also requires food handlers to carry out regular checks and to rotate stock using the method first in, first out, to ensure foods are also used within the best before dates. Food safety is the production of safe food, which is free of all contaminants, so that it will not cause any illness, harm or injury. This is achieved by controlling 4 types of hazards, all of which have the potential to cause harm. The most common hazard is microbiological and includes bacterial and viral contamination. Bacteria are tiny living beings called microorganisms that are generally too small to be seen without a microscope. They are the most common form of microbial contamination in the food industry and include both pathogenic and spoilage organisms. Pathogenic means harmful, disease-producing. These cause food poisoning and foodborne diseases. They do not change the taste, smell or texture of the food. Spoilage bacteria, however, cause food to perish and rot. The good news is not all bacteria cause problems. Many are harmless. Others are actively helpful and used, for example, in the manufacture of beer, cheese and yogurt. Viruses are also disease-causing microorganisms which are around 100 times smaller than bacteria. Chemical hazards may include pesticides on raw vegetables, fruit and salad ingredients, or from cross-contamination with cleaning chemicals. Chemical food poisoning is rare, but when it does occur, the consequences are usually serious, giving rise to both acute and chronic symptoms of food poisoning. Physical hazards are more commonly referred to as foreign objects. See examples shown in the illustration. They may include glass, screws or pieces of jewellery, or may even be a natural component of the food, such as stalks, bones, pips, etc. This type of hazard could be harmful to health, for example causing cuts inside the mouth, broken teeth and choking. It may also be objectionable, causing a feeling of disgust if something is found in food that should not be there. Remember, if you or a patient identifies any physical contamination in any food, please return the meal or food item to catering as soon as possible so that the source can be investigated. Allergenic hazards are also important and must be considered. An update on controls for food allergies and food intolerances will be provided later in this presentation. In order to comply with food law and ensure food is safe, we are required to have in place a food safety management system which is based on the principles of HACCP, Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. This helps businesses to identify, assess and control significant hazards that may affect food safety. It does this by locating all the points in a food process where hazards could occur, deciding which points are critical to the safety of the end product, focusing control on those critical points. HACCP helps to prevent potential food safety problems and involves following good food safety practices at all times and maintaining a clean, safe working environment. In order to demonstrate the trust compliance with food safety management at ward level, each ward has a food safety folder which must be kept tidy, organised and ready for inspection. Ward staff are required to complete 3 food safety checklists. Once completed, they must be filed in this folder. The first one is the opening and closing checklist. This must be completed twice daily. The opening check should be completed as the first task in the morning to confirm that all food preparation surfaces are decluttered and have been cleaned and sanitised using the 2-step cleaning method so that it is ready for the day's service. The 2-step cleaning method will be explained to you later in the presentation. A very important closing check is to ensure there is no food like sandwiches in the refrigerator past the use-by date. This must be carried out by ward staff before midnight to ensure the food is not past the use-by date in the morning. Remember, the use-by date is a safety label. You cannot tell if the food is contaminated with pathogenic harmful bacteria or viruses by checking taste, smell or texture of the food. The ward kitchen cleaning checklist must be carried out daily and is the responsibility of both ward staff and the cleanliness technician. This form should be stored in a clip frame so that it is easily available and accessible to complete. Please also ensure you're familiar with the ward kitchen cleaning schedule, which is on display in your ward kitchen. The ward kitchen maintenance checklist must be carried out once a month. This is a check to ensure the kitchen is in good repair and maintained. Requests for repairs must be made to the Estates Department by completed a MyCAD requisition. Details should be recorded on this form to provide evidence that this has been completed. It is important to note that the refrigerator freezer monitoring form will be completed by catering staff. This form is stored in a clip frame close to the refrigerator. At the end of each month, completed forms will be filed in the catering department. All wards are responsible for maintaining food safety standards in the ward kitchens. Please refer to the A3 poster titled Daily Ward Kitchen Practices. This can be found on display in your ward kitchen. Please refer to this for the daily tasks which must be completed by the housekeeper or any ward staff covering these duties when there is no housekeeper available. Keep all templates and completed checklists in your food safety folder. As a food handler, you have legal responsibilities for ensuring that the food you prepare, serve or sell is safe to eat, to ensure that consumers are safe from the risk of foodborne illness and harm. Your legal obligations include protecting food from contamination or anything that could cause harm, keeping the workplace clean and hygienic, and reporting food safety hazards to a supervisor or manager. A Datex incident report form must be completed when reporting a food safety incident. This includes any near-miss incidents. Please also ensure you always follow these statutory requirements for personal hygiene. Hand hygiene. Remember that people are a common source of harmful bacteria. Hands are often in contact with food, cloths, equipment and utensils. They are themselves a significant vehicle of contamination. Careless handling may add bacteria to food or surfaces. It is therefore important to keep your hands clean at all times using the soap and water method at the designated wash hand basin in the ward kitchen. Follow the 7-step process and where possible make it visible to your patients during food service. It is important that you always wash your hands on entry to the ward kitchen before accessing the ward refrigerator. As a food handler, you must wear clean and protective clothing to protect food from becoming contaminated. When you are carrying out any food handling task, including serving meals, beverages, filling water jugs, feeding patients, you must always wear a green disposable apron. Cuts and wounds. These must be covered with a blue coloured waterproof dressing. They are coloured blue so they are visible if they accidentally fall into the food. These must be available in the ward kitchen. Jewellery. This can cause both microbiological and physical contamination. For example, jewellery may be contaminated with dirt and microorganisms which could be transferred to food when handling. It can also cause physical contamination if stones or small parts fall off into the food. Therefore, the jewellery policy for food handlers is one plain band ring without any engraving or stones. No earrings or other items of jewellery are permitted. This is to prevent microbiological and physical contamination. Reporting illness. Please report to your supervisor or manager immediately if you believe you're suffering from or are a carrier of foodborne illness, or have any infected wounds, skin infections or sores likely to contaminate food. If suffering from diarrhea, fecal stool samples must also be provided in accordance with Food Safety Policy Code of Practice 1, reporting and notification of conditions of illness and employment practices. It is also important to ensure 48 hours clearance before returning to any food handling duties. Foodborne illness is a general term for illnesses linked to eating contaminated food. It covers both food poisoning and foodborne diseases. Food poisoning. This is an acute illness which usually occurs within 1 to 36 hours of eating contaminated or poisonous food. It is caused by bacteria multiplying in or on food that is then eaten. The most common symptoms of food poisoning include abdominal pain, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, and examples include Salmonella and Clostridium perfringens. Foodborne diseases are caused by pathogenic microorganisms, including bacteria and viruses, which are carried on the food. These microorganisms do not multiply inside the person who has eaten the food. The onset time is usually days. For example, Campylobacter 3 to 5 days, and Listeria, this can be between 3 and 70 days. The symptoms are often more complex than for food poisoning. There's still likely to be abdominal pain, diarrhea, nausea and vomiting, but fever, flu-like symptoms, headaches, rashes and even organ failure can result. Vulnerable groups of people. These groups are not only at greater risk of contracting a foodborne illness, but are also at greater risk of medical complications resulting from that illness. Vulnerable groups include people aged 60 and over, babies and very young children, pregnant women and nursing mothers, people with a serious or chronic illness or disease, and people with a weakened immune system as a result of taking immunosuppressive medication. All these vulnerable groups are all under our care, and therefore we must strive for the high standards of food safety. Let's take a look at how these foodborne illnesses can occur. Bacteria, this is by far the commonest cause and in some instances may result in dehydration and even death. A large number of bacteria are usually involved, and this normally requires them to multiply within the food. Viruses. A large number of reported cases of diarrhea and vomiting result from infection with viruses, which are much smaller than bacteria and do not multiply in the food. Moulds. These are often responsible for the spoilage of foods due to the prolonged unsatisfactory storage. However, some mould produce mycotoxins, which cause illness and sometimes death. Food involved include nuts, figs, apple juice as examples. Chemicals. Acute food poisoning from chemicals is rare. This may be from pesticides, cleaning agents, or excessive amounts of chemical additives. Cleaning should never be carried out when food handling is taking place, and chemicals must be stored separately and locked away in the cleaning cupboard. Acute metallic food poisoning is also quite rare and usually results from acid food or drink being in contact with certain metals such as copper, cadmium or zinc. Once canned food is opened, always decant and store in non-metallic containers. Poisonous plants and fish rarely cause food poisoning in commercial premises. However, cases of food poisoning from toadstools, tea contaminated with deadly nightshade, undercooked red kidney beans and the Japanese pufferfish have been recorded. Where can we find these sources of infection? Raw food. Bacteria are naturally present in the environment and in animal intestines, so bacteria may be carried into food premises on raw food such as fruit, vegetables, meat, poultry, fish, shellfish, eggs and untreated milk. People. Disease-causing bacteria can be found on human skin and in the ears, nose, throat and hair, and also live in huge quantities in the intestines, whether or not we are ill. Food can be contaminated through poor personal hygiene and poor food safety practices. Air and dust. The air carries dust and dirt that can contain pathogenic bacteria, which can then settle on uncovered food. Equipment. Bacteria can be found on the surfaces of equipment that has not been cleaned properly. Soil. On raw, unwashed fruit and vegetables, these may contain bacteria. Pests such as animals, birds and insects carry bacteria on and in their bodies and can spread them to food. Water. If untreated or inadequately treated, water can carry bacteria and contaminate raw, ready-to-eat food such as salad vegetables. Food waste. If it's not clearly identified properly and contained and disposed of on a regular basis, food waste can be used in error and or attract pests. Let's take a look at the requirements for bacterial multiplication. For bacteria to multiply, a combination of conditions is needed. By controlling the conditions available to bacteria, it is possible to stop them multiplying and causing illness. These are the conditions which bacteria require for growth and multiplication to occur. Food. Bacteria need similar nutrients to humans and can multiply to great numbers on high protein foods such as meat, meat products, poultry, eggs, milk, milk products and seafood. Moisture. All life forms require moisture and bacteria are no exception. It is vital to dry surfaces where possible after cleaning to deny bacteria the moisture that they need. Warmth. Bacteria multiply best at temperatures between 5 degrees centigrade and 63 degrees centigrade, a range known as the danger zone. The average ideal temperature for rapid bacterial multiplication is 37 degrees centigrade, the temperature of the human body. Time. Under optimum conditions, bacteria can reproduce by doubling in number every 10 to 20 minutes by a process called binary fission. Within a few hours, one bacterium can multiply to over 10 million bacteria. High-risk foods, what are they? These are foods which are ready to eat and will support the growth of pathogenic, harmful bacteria such as Listeria monocytogenes. Remember, hospital-related outbreaks of Listeria have been linked in the past to contaminated pre-packed sandwiches. It is therefore very important that sandwiches are kept under temperature control below 5 degrees centigrade in the ward kitchen refrigerator until the patient is ready to eat them. At service time, please do not get a selection of sandwiches out and leave them at ambient room temperature. The critical time limit that sandwiches can be left at room temperature once served is 1 hour. It is also important to check that perishable food is not being stored in patients' lockers. Remember to check the use-by date before service. Please do not serve any food which is out of date. Let us take a look at what happens to bacteria at various temperatures. 0 degrees centigrade is the temperature at which water freezes. -18 degrees centigrade is the temperature of a freezer. At this temperature, bacteria are dormant. Between 0 and 4 degrees centigrade is the ideal air temperature range for a refrigerator. This will ensure food is kept safe, but remember, spoilage organisms will still continue to grow. This temperature will be checked by catering staff when they deliver the sandwiches. 8 degrees centigrade is the chilled legal temperature of food. However, this temperature is considered to be too warm to prevent listeria. Therefore, 5 degrees centigrade is the temperature we must store our chilled food. This is important to control listeria and is best practice. Between 5 and 63 degrees centigrade is known as the danger zone. Bacteria are able to multiply within this range by binary fission. 37 degrees centigrade represents the optimum temperature for bacterial growth. 63 degrees centigrade is the legal hot hold temperature. However, our critical target to meet the needs of our food service and ensure food safety is to maintain our temperature above 75 degrees centigrade. 75 degrees centigrade represents the cooking and the regeneration target temperature. At this temperature, most bacteria are destroyed. 82 degrees centigrade represents the thermal disinfection temperature for our commercial dishwashers. And 100 degrees centigrade is the boiling point of water. It is important to remember that when conditions are not favourable for survival, for example, when temperatures exceed the danger zone or where there is no moisture, most bacteria will die. However, some bacteria can survive and form a hard cell-like structure known as a spore. This contains all the necessary material to continue life until conditions improve again, even if this takes years. Once conditions improve, the spore reverts back to the form of a bacterium and is then capable of multiplying once again by the process of binary fission. Ward refrigerators and freezers. Each ward kitchen is equipped with a commercial refrigerator, which should operate within a temperature range of 0 and 4 degrees centigrade. The catering department is responsible for completing the ward kitchen refrigerator monitoring form. However, it is very important for ward staff to know the correct operating temperature and to report if the unit breaks down. In order to ensure high-risk foods, such as sandwiches, are maintained at a safe temperature below 5 degrees, a block of margarine is provided for catering staff to probe and record the temperature. Please remember that this is not for consumption. Ward staff are responsible for ensuring the following. Maintenance. So please check door seals and magnetic strips regularly. This must be replaced if damaged. Cleanliness. Please keep the refrigerator clean and tidy and remember to always wash your hands before opening the door. Stock rotation. In order to ensure stock is used in rotation, please use the method known as FIFO, first in, first out. Please ensure labels face forward so dates can be clearly seen. Temperature control. This is important for high-risk foods, so please keep all sandwiches in the refrigerator until your patients are ready to eat them. Remember, any staff food must be kept in a separate staff refrigerator. The regen ward kitchens are also equipped with commercial freezers. This is for the storage of ice cream and mousse. They operate at -18 degrees centigrade. The food poisoning chain consists of 3 major hazards: contamination of high-risk food, multiplication of bacteria within the food, and survival of bacteria within the food. Food poisoning is preventable, and this can be achieved by controlling these hazards and breaking the food poisoning chain. So don't allow food poisoning bacteria to contaminate high-risk foods. Keep high-risk foods out of the danger zone between 5 and 63 degrees and do not provide time for bacteria to multiply, as this will cause infection. All patient and most commercial meals are provided by the cook-chill, cook-freeze regeneration method. Modified textured diets, ethnic meals and the allergy-aware menus are also available, and these are purchased as individual frozen meals. A hostess service is provided by the catering department, which is supported by ward staff who serve the meals to patients and provide assistance with eating where required. Cook-chill food and individual frozen meals are loaded and regenerated in the Burr Lodge food trolleys shown in the top image. This regeneration process takes place either in the main kitchen or the regen ward kitchens. Once the regeneration cycle has been completed, food trolleys will be distributed from the main kitchen or will transfer from the regen ward kitchens and plugged into a service point on the ward. The host or hostess will then prepare for service. Before food service can begin at ward level, the temperature of the food must be taken and recorded by the host or hostess to ensure all food has reached a core temperature above 75 degrees centigrade. This is a critical control point. The host or hostess will also need to prepare gravy and custard in the ward kitchen. Whilst this is taking place, the Protected Mealtime Coordinator is required to organise the ward team to prepare patients for meal service. This will be discussed later in the presentation for protected mealtimes. Once temperatures have been taken, food service must begin immediately and must be completed within a critical time limit of 30 minutes. Therefore, all available ward staff need to participate in food service. In order to ensure a smooth, efficient food service, it is important that a member of the ward team is nominated as the Protected Mealtime Coordinator for each meal service. This role is empowered to be in charge of the mealtime, to lead and coordinate the food service. Please wear the badge to identify. The Protected Mealtime Coordinator will need to take responsibility for ensuring patient meal choices are taken well before the service commences. This will help prevent any service delays. For each mealtime, patients will be required to choose what they would like to eat from the menu. A master matrix template is provided by catering for each service. This provides information on how many portions of each dish will be sent to you in the Burr Lodge food trolley. Please use this information when taking your patients' meal orders so that you can keep track on portions available. If there's a popular dish and you run out, you can then offer patients the alternative choices. A template form is available which is shown on the next slide for you to use to record patient choices so that you can instruct the hostess what to serve onto the plate. Please make sure that patients are always referred to by their name, and this should be recorded on the template form. During service, you are encouraged to use colour-coded laminated cards with the bay and bed number on. This should be placed on the tray rather than shouting out the location. Some wards are using sticky notes, and this works well too. This will help staff remember which patients they are serving and help prevent the wrong meal being given to a patient. This template also captures the following information: choices for main courses, potatoes, vegetables and desserts, patients who require a red tray, red lid and assistance with eating, patients who have a food allergy, patients who require modified textured diets, and patients who require to choose from our ethnic menu. Portion sizes are also identified. The medium-sized portion is the standard portion. Please note that the small portions must be used with caution. Small portions must not be given in order to make portions go further, as this will mean patients will not get the recommended nutrients and calorie intake. The large portion is for offering extra portions if there is any time left within the 30-minute service time. Check before serving extra portions to ensure it meets the patient's dietary requirements. For patient satisfaction, it is important that you always rotate the bays for service so that all patients get the opportunity of receiving their first choice. This is the template form which will help you to record all the patient's choices and to highlight important information. Remember, this will need to be completed well before the food service begins for lunch and dinner. Remember to check how many portions of each dish are available. You can transfer the information from your matrix templates to this form to help prevent you running out of a choice. Remember to highlight the following: patients who have a food allergy, patients who require a red tray and assistance with eating. Remember to use blue crockery for patients with memory impairment. You can indicate on the red tray with a blue dot to help you remember. Ensure the correct modified diet is recorded to ensure you are serving the correct diet. Check if you have any patients who are nil by mouth and that this is up to date so patients do not miss a meal. Each ward is provided with a catering ward manual. It is important that you familiarise yourself with the contents and always refer to this document for information regarding the ordering arrangements for different dietary requirements and to understand which meals are available for the ITSE diets, ethnic meals and the allergy aware menus. All these menus are provided as frozen individual portion meals and must be ordered in advance. The order form must be placed in the plastic menu folder in the ward kitchen ready for collection. Catering will collect at 9 AM for both lunch and dinner. It is important to ensure that these menus are completed within this time frame so that the meals can be picked and loaded into the trolleys in time for regeneration. Once the food trolleys have been put onto the regen cycle, they cannot be stopped intermittently to put more meals inside. If you do have any late admissions, please ring catering as soon as possible. However, there may be a time delay whilst the regeneration takes place by alternative reheating methods. This particularly affects the ITSE textured modified meals as the microwave is not suitable due to adverse effects on the consistencies. ITSE is the International Dysphagia Diet Standardization Initiative. It is a global initiative to develop common terminology and consistent textures for foods and fluids that are modified for people with dysphagia, swallowing difficulties. The Trust has adopted the descriptors for food. They are as follows: ITSE Level 3, liquidized, moderately thick. This is a new addition to our range introduced in 2021. It can be eaten with a spoon or drunk from a cup. It cannot be eaten with a fork because it drips through the fork prongs. It has a smooth texture with no bits, for example lumps, fibres, husk, bits of shell or skin, particles of gristle or bone. This menu is yellow. ITSE Level 4, pureed food. Food is smooth with no lumps, not sticky, no chewing ability needed. This is on the green menu. ITSE Level 5, minced and moist. Food is very soft, small moist lumps, minimal chewing ability needed. Lumps are no bigger than 4 millimeters for adults. This is on the orange menu. ITSE Level 6, soft and bite size. Food is bite size, no more than 1.5 centimeters by 1.5 centimeter pieces for adults, and very soft, could be easily mashed with a fork. There is no thin liquid leaking or dripping from the food. Chewing ability is needed. This is on a blue menu. ITSE Level 7, easy to chew. Normal foods that have been specifically chosen to be soft and tender requires biting and chewing. These are available from the food trolley, so it is important to check which meals are suitable. Options should be available in the housekeeper manual. If no suitable options are available, contact catering. Sandwiches which are suitable for this diet, unless specified on the salt yellow advice sheet are tuna and egg mayonnaise with the crusts removed. IDSI fluid descriptors are as follows. Level 0 thin fluids. This is a normal fluid. It flows freely like water and can be drunk from a cup or straw as appropriate for patient. Level 1 slightly thick fluids, made with 1 scoop of Nutilis thickener per 200 ml of fluid, thicker than water, can be drunk from a cup or through a straw, similar to single cream. Level 2 mildly thick fluids, made with 2 scoops of Nutilis per 200 ml of fluid, pours quickly from a spoon but more slowly than water, can be drunk from a cup and a straw, although with some effort. Level 3 moderately thick fluids, made with 3 scoops of Nutilis per 200 ml of fluids, drip slowly through the prongs of a fork, can be drunk from a cup but is more difficult to drink through a straw. Level 4 extremely thick fluids, made with 7 scoops of Nutilis per 200 ml of fluid, holds its shape and cannot be poured, cannot be drunk from a cup or through a straw, usually taken from a spoon. To make up a thickened drink to the correct IDSI level, remember to check salt recommendations and also the number of scoops required. Number of scoops can be found on the side of the tub. Always add the thickener to a dry cup. Make up your 200 ml of drink in a separate cup and pour over thickener, stirring continuously. Allow to stand for 1 minute and stir again. These drinks need to be remade regularly as they only last for 2 hours. It is very important for patient safety that thickener is stored on the housekeeper's trolley or locked in the medication drawer due to the risk of asphyxiation by accidental ingestion of thickening powder. Remember that ice cream and jelly cannot be given to patients on thickened drinks. There are a number of different yellow advice sheets that speech and language therapists place at the bedside. These yellow signs need to accompany the patient on all ward moves and on their discharge from hospital. The main ones you will see is swallowing recommendations, shown here on this slide. It contains information regarding IDSI levels, specific advice for feeding, supervision, types of cups or cutlery, and prompts required during the meal times. It also tells you to contact a speech therapist if you notice signs of excessive coughing, throat clearing, the voice sounds wet, the chest has deteriorated, or aspiration is suspected. You may see other yellow sheets above the bedside. Examples include nil by mouth, feeding at risk, taste for pleasure, and oral trials. Oral trial sheets include a separate table that needs filling in with each trial. It is important to follow the recommendations and read all information on the yellow sheet, as well as supporting and encouraging regular vigorous oral care. I would like to share a very sad case which occurred in a care home in Scotland, which highlights the importance of ensuring patients are provided with the correct diet and that staff always follow instructions provided on the yellow sheets. This case is about a 65-year-old resident in a care home in Clonmacnoise who was on a specialist diet of minced and moist food after a severe stroke and vascular dementia left her at risk of choking. On the 7th of August 2019, the patient was given a piece of jam donut as a snack from the tea trolley, which she choked on. Despite efforts of care home staff and paramedics to remove the food, the resident died. The care home pleaded guilty to failings under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 and were fined £640,000. HSC's investigation found that staff who gave out snacks had not been properly trained and did not have any awareness of food that was suitable for each diet. They regularly gave this resident food that was not suitable for her diet in breach of their own risk assessment. Remember to always check diet and fluid recommendations when admitted and to follow the yellow advice sheet. Be careful when offering snacks. Make sure that these meet the requirements. If you have any questions about eating, drinking or swallowing safety, please contact the SALT team. Let's take a look at ward kitchen service. Commercial microwaves have been provided in selected ward kitchens to reheat individual frozen meals that have been provided by the catering department only. This service is available on the delivery ward in Women's and Children's, ITU at PRH, and the A&E departments at both sites. Specific training and instruction is provided by the catering department for this service. These microwaves must not be used for any other purpose and instructions must be followed. When using the microwave, it is very important not to leave the microwave unattended as this is a fire hazard. Microwaves in other ward kitchens are strictly not permitted for reheating any patient's food. Staff microwaves must not be located in patient ward kitchens either. To ensure patients are kept hydrated, all wards must provide 7 beverage rounds, providing a selection of hot and cold beverages. To help keep patients nourished, please offer snacks, biscuits, fresh fruit, cakes, in between meals. It's a good idea to offer these on the beverage rounds, but it's important to check first if any patients are on any modified textured diets. It's also important to ensure good stock rotation by the method of first in, first out, to ensure that these products are used within the expiry date so that the quality of the product is not compromised. Ambient dried products like breakfast cereals, biscuits, cup of soups, etc. will have a best before date on them. Best before dates are date marks that indicate when food is of an appropriate quality. They usually appear on less perishable food that has a long shelf life, such as canned, dried and frozen products. Toast should be offered at breakfast time and also provides a really good snack in between meals. When using the toaster, remember to ensure the kitchen door is closed and never leave the toaster unattended. This is also a fire hazard and has resulted in toasters catching fire. Please also ensure the crumb tray is emptied daily. At meal times, please offer patients condiments such as sauces, salt and pepper, etc. A stainless steel condiment carrier should be used for this purpose. Please remember, staff food must not be stored in the patient refrigerator. A separate unit should be provided in a staff room area. More information can be found in the Trust Food Safety Policy Code of Practice 13 for ward kitchens. Cleaning chemicals in the ward kitchen. Please ensure you only use the approved chemicals which are listed here and not the ones indicated with a cross. The cost information for all these chemicals must be available, up to date and stored in your food safety folder. It is very important to ensure all cleaning materials and chemicals are stored safely and separately. This must be in a locked cupboard under the sink. The main kitchen door should also be kept locked. Food and crockery is strictly not permitted to store in this cupboard. Items like open packets of dishwash tablets and dishcloths must be stored in plastic lidded containers to protect the products in case of leakage from the U-bend. Please also remember, never decant chemicals into cups or use plastic cups as scoops for dispensing any chemicals. Always use the correct equipment. The two-stage cleaning method is important to ensure food contact surfaces are cleaned appropriately and to avoid the formation and build-up of biofilms. Biofilms are not usually visible, and if not removed, biofilms can persist on food contact surfaces and equipment for several years. If food comes into contact with a biofilm during preparation, it can become contaminated. Please ensure you always follow the two-step cleaning method for all cleaning in the ward kitchen. A poster providing instruction on the two-step cleaning method is available in the ward kitchen and is illustrated on this slide. Before you start cleaning an area, you must make sure that food is stored safely out of the way so that it cannot be contaminated. First, remove any physical debris like crumbs from the surface you are cleaning. Carry out step 1. This involves preparing a solution of hot water plus Hospec detergent. Use this to clean the surface and remove dirt and grease. Before carrying out step 2, it is very important to rinse off and remove any detergent residue, otherwise this may inactivate the sanitizer from working. You must then dry the surface with white disposable roll. This will help to prevent diluting the sanitizer. Step 2. Apply the Evans Esteem sanitizer by spraying onto the dry surface. It is very important to leave the sanitizer on the surface for the correct contact time of 30 seconds to allow the sanitizer to be effective. Dry with white paper roll. Remember to use single-use green disposable cloths for cleaning and white paper roll for drying. Never leave used dishcloths on the side of the sink. For all stainless steel surfaces, use Evans stainless steel cleaner. I suggest this only needs to be carried out once a week. Buff up with white paper roll. Ensure all food and hand contact surfaces are always clean using the two-step cleaning method. All ward kitchens are provided with a commercial dishwasher which is capable of thermal disinfection to at least 82 degrees centigrade. These are provided to wash and disinfect patient jugs and glasses in all ward kitchens. At RSH in the Regen ward kitchens, these dishwashers are also used for washing all the crockery. For other wards, crockery is washed in the central dishwash in catering. Please remember that washing up by hand is strictly forbidden. If your dishwasher breaks down, please follow the following contingency procedure. Contact estates immediately and complete a MICAD requisition. Infection Prevention and Control have advised that in the first instance, wards must not send jugs, glasses, etc. to another ward kitchen to share their dishwasher. Please refer to the ward dishwasher contingency flowcharts in your ward kitchen. Wards are advised to hold extra stock of jugs and glasses for contingency purposes. In extreme circumstances, if your dishwasher is likely to be out of order for prolonged periods, a contingency dishwasher can be requested from estates. Pest prevention and control. Food pests are animals, birds or insects capable of contaminating or damaging food. Typical food pests include rodents, birds and insects. Food premises are attractive to pests because they provide food, moisture, warmth and shelter. Apart from the fact that their presence contravenes food hygiene laws, pests must be controlled because they can contaminate food or food contact surfaces with harmful bacteria and spread disease. They can physically contaminate food with their droppings, hairs and body parts, cause damage to stock, structure and fabric of food premises and equipment. They can cause wastage of food, customer complaints and can also lead to fines, prosecution and even closure of the premises. Pest prevention is important, so store dry goods in moisture and pest-proof containers. Remember, opening windows must be fitted with fly screens and kept closed to prevent entry. It is essential to check regularly for any signs of pest infestation and report any sightings immediately to the Estates Department. We will now move on to food allergy management. In 2014, it became law for all food businesses to provide information about allergenic ingredients. This legislation applies to our trust, and therefore as a food handler you have a legal responsibility to provide the correct allergen information about the ingredients that are in pre-packed and loose food, e.g. patient meals provided by our hospital. Further legislation protecting allergy sufferers came into force in October 2021, called Natasha's Law. This was following the death of Natasha Ednan Laperouse, who sadly died after an allergic reaction to sesame seeds, which was found in a baguette purchased from a chain called Pret-a-Manger. Under this new legislation, all food businesses now have to include full ingredient labelling on any food which is considered pre-packed for direct sale, or PPDS. This is when a food business makes their own food and puts it into packaging before a customer selects or orders it and sells it from the same premises. Before Natasha's Law was introduced, this used to be exempt if the sandwich was made on the same premises that it was sold at, and businesses were able to provide the allergy information by other means, for example orally. These changes apply to all businesses selling food pre-packed for direct sale. It makes food labels clear and consistent and can give the country's 2 million food allergy sufferers confidence in making safe food choices. Let's take a look at the difference between food allergies and food intolerances. A food allergy can be defined as a rapid and serious response of the body's immune system to certain food or food additives that it mistakenly perceives as a threat. Even a tiny trace of an allergen in food can cause an allergic reaction. Food intolerances don't usually involve your immune system. However, with gluten, it does. Therefore, any cereals containing gluten are now listed as one of the 14 named food allergens. Food intolerance is more common than food allergy and occurs when somebody's body is unable to digest certain foods. Symptoms usually take longer to appear and are not life-threatening, although food intolerances can negatively affect long-term health. In the UK, about 10 people die every year from an allergic reaction to food, and many more are admitted to hospital. It is therefore vitally important that everyone who prepares or handles food in any context is fully aware of the foods that may trigger an allergic reaction and the precautions that must be taken to ensure that consumers, our patients, do not eat a food or ingredient that they are allergic to. Food allergic reactions and symptoms can range from being mild to very serious. Symptoms can affect different areas of the body at the same time and can include rashes, swelling around the mouth and throat, chest tightness and shortness of breath. A severe allergic reaction is known as anaphylactic shock and must be treated as a medical emergency. If untreated, it can be fatal. If you think someone is suffering from anaphylaxis, you need to know how to get help and where to locate your nearest anaphylactic box, which is in your resus trolley. Common allergens. Any food can cause an allergic reaction, but some are more common than others. Within the EU, 14 food products are identified as most commonly causing a food allergy, and it is important to be familiar with these. They are referred to as the 14 named food allergens and include cereals containing gluten, peanuts, tree nuts, milk, soya, mustard, lupin, eggs, fish, crustaceans, mollusks, sesame seeds, celery, and sulfur dioxide. They must be declared on labels of foods that are pre-packed and pre-packed for direct sale, PPDS, and also on any food which is sold loose or served as a meal. This is known as non-pre-packed food. It's not always easy to tell from the name of a product whether it contains an allergen, so you must always check the label. By law, if any of the 14 named allergens are present, they must be highlighted in the ingredient list using either a bold font or a different style font or colour to draw attention to the allergens. If you take anything out of a packet, check the ingredients first. For non-pre-packed food, for example hot meals, please ensure that any patients who are allergic to any of the 14 named allergens choose from the Allergy Aware menu. Ensure your order is placed in the menu folder provided in the ward kitchen before 9 AM. Contact catering immediately for any late admissions. If gluten-free toast is required, this must be ordered and collected from the main kitchen. Gluten-free toast must not be prepared at ward level. This is to prevent cross-contamination. It is important that nursing staff follow the 4-step procedure for food allergen inquiries for all patients on admission to their ward. The 4-step process is displayed as a poster in the ward kitchen, and this is also in the nursing notes for each patient. On admission, the registered nurse must identify as soon as possible if patients have a food allergy. This must be carried out on all wards, including any ward transfers. Step 1. If the patient has a food allergy or intolerance, ensure the allergy symbol is ticked above the bed with the food allergy identified. Ensure the patient is provided with a red wristband and document the food allergies clearly in the nursing notes. Step 2. Send an email to Allergy Alert. The address is provided on the poster. Eventually, the allergy symbol will appear on the PSAC, Patient Status at a Glance board. Please be aware that this may not show on the screen immediately. This may take a couple of days, which is why it is important to ensure it is recorded immediately on the patient's bedboard to ensure clear communication to the rest of the ward team. If the patient has one or more of the 14 named allergens, please order from the Allergy Aware menu. If the patient has other types of food allergies, it is important to follow step 3 and 4 by contacting the nominated person in catering to ascertain clearly what menu items will be safe for the patient to eat. Communication is very important with the rest of the ward team so that all staff are aware of patients' food allergies. It is advised that food allergies are clearly communicated during ward huddles so that all healthcare assistants and housekeepers are also aware. If you are the protected mealtime coordinator, make sure you are aware of any patients who have any food allergies. For steps 3 and 4, you must speak to the nominated person in catering. This is the designated person in catering who will be able to confirm which meals are safe for your patients to eat. Please never guess or help yourself to meals from the trolley without first receiving confirmation from the nominated person in catering on what is safe for your patients to eat. This is the patient bedboard. Please ensure you tick the allergy symbol as shown here and list the allergens in the additional information section. This is the registered nurse responsibility and must be completed as soon as possible following admission to the ward. Communication is also very important with your patients to identify if they have any food allergies. These are the Think Allergy posters, which may help you to communicate with your patients, particularly if there are any language barriers. For patients who have memory impairment or are very poorly, you should contact relatives or carers to obtain this information. Posters are available in different languages and can be found in your food safety folder. In order to ensure that the allergy meal is provided to the correct patient, allergy meals must always be served first. An allergy tray paper must be placed on the tray before the meal. Ensure you select the correct coloured tray for your patient. This may be a green or a red tray. Remember that the red tray is for any patients who are at risk of malnutrition and have a must score of 1 or higher. The purpose of the allergy tray paper is to alert you to stop and pause for a moment. Check carefully that you are giving the right meal to the right patient. So, check the bedboard. Does the patient have a red wristband? If the patient has capacity, you can ask the patient. Food brought in by patients, visitors and carers continues on many wards. This needs to be discouraged and managed. The Trust Food Safety Policy Code of Practice 13, Ward Kitchens and Safe Food Handling Practices, Section 14, provides advice on how to manage this appropriately. It provides advice on bringing food in for vulnerable patients, as there could be a risk that these foods may have been prepared, handled, transported and stored unhygienically or inappropriately. This could potentially present an increased risk for certain vulnerable groups. In order to manage this risk, vulnerable groups and their visitors must be discouraged from bringing in chilled, ready-to-eat foods. Other low-risk foods which do not require refrigeration are permitted, and they include low-risk foods such as UHT yogurts, jellies, custard pots, wrapped confectionery, fresh washed fruit, squash, cakes and snacks. Please also remember staff are not permitted to bring in high-risk foods from outside the trust for any patient. If you discover that food is being brought in or takeaway meals are being ordered, this is the action that you should take if this happens on your ward. Have a discussion with the patient to ascertain why they're having food brought in. If they're unhappy with the food provided or have a complaint about any of their meals, please contact a member of the catering management team as soon as possible. If the patient insists on bringing their own food in, please encourage them to eat the food as soon as possible. Explain the risks attached to bringing in ready-to-eat foods that require refrigeration or takeaway foods. Unfortunately, we cannot encourage storage of high-risk food brought in due to the possible risk of cross-contamination and storage capacity. Some exceptions may apply, which are a lower risk, for example UHT yogurts, but only small amounts may be stored. Please label clearly with the patient's name and ensure food is served within the expiry date. If the patient insists in bringing in chilled ready-to-eat food or any other high-risk food like takeaways, please make a note on the patient's file in case they are ill after consumption. Complete a Datex incident form to record the event and what action has been taken. Only one Datex per patient is required. It is not necessary to complete an incident form for the same patient at every event thereafter. Please also routinely check lockers to make sure high-risk food is not being stored. There may be circumstances where some exceptions may apply, for example end-of-life care, but always contact catering who may be able to assist you. Another example may be patients like children with multiple allergens. This must be carefully managed if food is brought in and may need a risk assessment. Always seek advice from the Trust Food Safety Advisor if unsure where applicable. The Red Tray System. This aims to ensure that all vulnerable patients who are at risk of malnutrition and who may also need some assistance with eating are identified so they can receive the correct level of assistance which is appropriate to their needs and for monitoring their food intake. To ensure good hydration, please also ensure patients' water jugs are regularly checked and refilled, unless of course the patient is on fluid restriction. How are patients requiring assistance with feeding identified? It is the registered nurse's responsibility to complete nutritional screening for each patient using the Malnutrition Universal Screening Tool known as MUST. This should be completed within 2 to 6 hours of admission to a ward in order to identify their MUST nutritional risk score. Patients who have a must nutritional risk score of 1 or higher must be served their meal on a red tray, and they must be provided with a red lid on their water jug. The red tray will also help to remind ward staff that the patient's food chart needs to be completed before the tray is removed at the end of service. Some patients may be on a red tray and are quite able to feed themselves without any assistance. However, there will be some patients who do need assistance with eating, and this must be clearly identified and facilitated. Here are a few examples. Patients who require full assistance with eating. These patients are not able to feed themselves and require a nurse to physically feed them. For example, a patient who may have suffered a stroke and has swallowing difficulties. These patients will be fed by a trained member of the ward team. Patients who are progressing to feed themselves but still may need partial assistance and/or supervision and/or encouragement. These patients may need a little help and some help with cutting up their food. Encouragement and supervision. Patients who are quite able to physically feed themselves but still have a risk score above 1. These patients may need encouragement and support to eat and may include patients suffering from dementia who very often forget to eat. Look out for the full and the outline butterfly symbols. Please also remember for patients who have memory impairments such as dementia to use the blue crockery that has been provided. You may also find that some patients just need some physical assistance because they have impaired vision, broken arm, etc., and request help with opening packets, cutting up food. These patients may have a lower nutritional risk score but just need assistance. Red trays should not be removed at service time. This is to ensure staff can clearly see who is on a red tray. However, if the tray has become distorted and doesn't balance firmly on the bedside table, a red non-slip mat can be used in its place. Here is a quick checklist to follow. If the patient's nutritional risk score is 1 or above, complete the following tasks immediately. Number 1. Ensure the red tray symbol is activated on PSAG. Reports are generated from PSAG to the catering department so they know how many red trays are needed. Number 2. Ensure the red tray symbol is ticked above the patient's bed. This information must be kept up to date and be consistent with information on PSAG. Number 3. Make sure a red lid is provided on the water jug. Number 4. Ensure a daily food and oral fluid chart is provided for the ward staff to monitor intake. Number 5. Identify what level of assistance with eating is required where applicable. Number 6. Communicate during your ward huddles to all the ward team, including housekeepers, healthcare assistants, so that they are all aware. And finally, number 7. Ensure the red trays provided during food service, assistance is provided where applicable, and the food chart is completed before the red tray is cleared away. This is the patient's bed board. The red tray symbol is shown here with the knife and fork symbol. Please tick here if the patients require a red tray and identify if the patient needs any level of assistance or encouragement or supervision in the additional information section. This is the daily food and oral fluid chart. Remember, this must be completed before the red tray is removed. Ensure this form is completed thoroughly to record the patient's intake of food and oral fluids. Protected meal times. The Trust has a protected mealtime policy. This has recently been updated and can be accessed on the Trust intranet. Protected meal times are described as periods when patients are allowed to eat and enjoy their meals in a calm and quiet environment without any unnecessary interruptions, to enable nursing staff and the ward team to provide the right level of assistance to meet patients' nutritional and hydration requirements. Please ensure you are familiar with the standards which we will require all wards to comply with. There may be occasions when some of the standards may not always be achievable all of the time, for example in times of high escalation. Decisions will therefore need to be made which should always be in the best interest for the patient's safety by the nurse in charge. Protected mealtime periods last 1 hour for each mealtime. Check your protected mealtime poster located at the entrance to your ward to see what time your protected mealtimes are. The aim of protected mealtimes is to try and achieve the following standards for every meal service where you possibly can. For each meal service, the nurse in charge must identify a team member to be the protected mealtime coordinator to organise and lead the meal service. This person is empowered to be in charge of the mealtime. As an example, if the protected mealtime is say 11:45 till 12:45, the protected mealtime coordinator should close the main door to the ward at 11:45 and ring the first bell to alert everyone that the protected mealtime has commenced. You will now have approximately 10 to 15 minutes to complete the preparation for service. This requires all available ward staff, nurses, healthcare assistants and housekeepers to assist with the following tasks. Clean and tidy all patients' bedside tables and remove any inappropriate items so there is enough room to place the patient's food tray safely on the bedside table. Ensure all patients are made comfortable in their bed or chair and ensure their bedside table is in easy reach. Provide all your patients with their hand wipes. They should not be put on patients' trays during food service, as patients are more likely to use them after the meal rather than before. Check if patients need any personal items like dentures, reading glasses and hearing aids. Make sure patients' water jugs are full unless they're on fluid restriction and that they have the right coloured lid. Whilst you're doing all this preparation, your host or your hostess will be busy preparing the Burr Lodge food trolley, taking food temperatures and making gravy and custard. When the hostess is ready to start service, the protected mealtime coordinator should ring the second bell to start service. Place food and drink within patient's reach and ensure napkins are provided. Remember, patients need to be kept hydrated throughout the day, therefore allow for 7 refreshment rounds per day. Leave special diet feeds until last. This is to allow meals to cool down before service. Release the lid and this will help it to cool down. Remember, the meals are very hot, so please place out of reach of vulnerable patients to prevent the risk of burns and scalds. The aim is to try and ensure that all unnecessary activity is ceased during mealtime. However, due to activity in the hospital, this can sometimes be very difficult. Always base your decisions on what is the best and safest for your patients. Patients should not be transferred while still eating. If patients have to go for scans or x-rays and their appointment cannot be rescheduled outside the mealtime, it's important to ensure that there is something for them to eat on their return. If these appointments can be rescheduled, these can be helpful to avoid patients missing a hot meal. However, if this is urgent, a cold option will be required. Clinical and non-clinical activities should be limited to essential to mealtime or essential to patient care. Drugs rounds should be paused and resumed once patient meals have been distributed and assistance provided. Some drugs are still required to be taken at mealtimes. Visitors during mealtimes. The ward should consider restricting routine visitors during mealtimes unless prior arrangements are made for the visitor or the relative to provide assistance or support. Relatives and carers can have a key role in supporting patients with eating food and therefore they should not be made to feel unwelcome at mealtimes. If they wish to support the meeting of the nutritional needs of the person that they're visiting, this should be facilitated. At the same time, we must also consider and protect patients' dignity for those who need assistance with eating. The environment should be calm and conducive to eating. Noise and people staring should be avoided. This brings us to the end of your statutory update training on food safety for this year. I hope you've found the session informative and helpful to assist you in doing your job. Please remember, food matters. Food safety, nutrition and hydration is important for all our patients. Together we can make a difference and give our patients a safe and enjoyable meal experience. You are now required to complete a multi-choice assessment to check your understanding. Please send your completed assessment back to the corporate education for marking and recording your compliance. You will then receive a certificate of completion. Many thanks.